Continuing the cool trend from last video, if you haven't seen my previous video, the coolest car guys to ever exist, I absolutely recommend watching it after this one. Moving along though, here are the 5 coolest car trims that we forget exist. The first one is actually an extremely popular car. It is obviously a Miata, but not just any Miata, the Mazdaspeed Miata. This is a turbo Miata from factory. It was available for the NB generation. It had 178 horsepower, a 6-speed gearbox, aluminum heads, change compression. This wasn't just haha turbo and done. This was an actual genuine attempt at a fast Miata from factory, and it was truly ahead of its time for its sport roadster category. And it's an absolute shame that Mazda hasn't tried since to offer a turbocharged Miata. While most sad boy JDM scrub lords are busy jerking off to the NA Miata prices, the NB Mazdaspeed goes completely forgotten by most, being able to be found for around 11 grand in a day and age where people want twice that price for a clapped out NA. I would not only call this car a good buy, I would just call it a good car in general, because truly this is just a forgotten Miata, and truly it's still a reminder that I feel like Mazda should do this again. I know some people may say it's sacrilege, but I know from factory there is still a desire for a turbocharged Miata, and I hope that someday Mazda gets the heart to want to be more of a fun company and more experimental like they were back then. The next cool car trim that is also forgotten is the Shelby Supersnake S550 generation. This is a 830 horsepower. It is the ultimate Shelby. Alpha Chad, peak masculinity. This the Mustang you want. So everyone knows that the S197 chassis had a Supersnake, which was its predecessor. I say that, but actually everyone doesn't know that. This S550 Supersnake is obviously the equivalent for this generation. However, a lot of clout boys completely forgot that Supersnakes were even a thing, and they all collectively blew their loads too early on the GT500. Thus, that makes it where to this day, the Supersnake still has allotments available for it, where GT500s are still suffering dealer markup and still struggling to meet limited production and constantly having to, cater to specific customers and blah blah blah. You can just walk in and order a Supersnake, because that's how forgotten it is, and there's a certain level of hilarity to that, but also tragedy. It is also purchased for roughly the same price, if not cheaper than the GT500, as once again proof to the fact that people forgot that it wasn't even a thing. They all blew their load on the GT500, and people are still blowing their load on the GT500 because they think that is still the ultimate Mustang. More or less, this is just proof of how effective good marketing can be, but also how adversely effective lack of marketing can be. The GT500, being from Ford, is a much larger company, so Ford was literally able to push it out into literally everyone's faces. The Supersnake, meanwhile, is actually registered, titled, and built as a Shelby America vehicle, and thus marketing wasn't done by Ford, but by Shelby instead, who didn't nearly have the funds to parade this low production car just to only have a few people buy it anyways. Shelby simply hoped that a lot of people would remember about how cool the previous Supersnake was in 2013, and how that was the literal last car that the actual man himself, Carroll Shelby, would ever take part in designing. I finally saw one of these in person at Caffeine and Octane here in Atlanta, and I literally heard people whispering, what does this even mean? It just sounds like an edgy, stupid name that was made up. Typical old guys with their fake trims trying to act all special. And that was the more common reaction, and it was really sad seeing a lot of the modern generation of car enthusiasts completely forget about the first Supersnake and just think that the GT500 is the end-all be-all of Ford Mustangs from factory. The next forgotten trim on this list is the SL65 AMG Black Series. This car has a special place in my heart. It was one of the fastest supercars of the class in Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010. This Black Series monstrosity still holds the record of being the highest factory torque vehicle ever to be released by Mercedes. While to most normal car enthusiasts, and obviously to tons of non-car people, it just looks like an oversized body kit on a normal retirement-driven SL. This, however, is not a V8 convertible like those are. This is a fixed roof hardtop V12 twin turbo beast. For 2009, this body kit was absolutely mental, up there with the Gumpert Apollo that came out a year earlier in 2008. Having wide bodies during this time was actually quite ridiculous and was considered malarkey, especially from factory. It was regarded as ugly, but it ended up growing up to be seen as muscular, aggressive, and this is one of the precursors to modern wide body culture. And this wasn't a cheap wide body either. This car has full carbon fiber panels from factory, and it has a fully custom designed hardtop, the Aston Martin Vanquish S. DB11, overrated. V12, check. 177 rear, check. Sexiest car to ever walk the earth, check. Quad tip exhaust, oh, you already know I sexually identify as quad tips. That's an actual quote I said on Kartaku. I wish that was a joke, but yeah, I've had a really weird run on this platform as a content creator. Regardless, the Aston Martin Vanquish is already a gorgeous car. I love it. And it is a completely underrated car on its own. The Vanquish S, however, is even more underrated. It is stunning, absolutely gorgeous. It turns a great and cool car even cooler. It is literally one of the coolest trims to ever exist on a vehicle, one of the prettiest cars to ever exist. I know a lot of DB owners and DB fans are gonna be like, oh, the Vanquish was a mistake. Oh, it's too 177 looking. It made the 177 feel cheaper because it was a knockoff, cheaper version of it, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I don't care. That's why it was cool to me. But also, I like the road presence of the Vanquish more. The length, the girth, the width, the stance. Just the way it looks. I think the DB, it's really weird how these cars in the used market are the same, right? But brand new, the Vanquish is like 100 grand more than the DB, but for some reason they end up around the same used price solely because of James Bond and the fact that markets the DB. This is very similar to the GT500 and Supersnake issue, where the better spec'd car from factory that also costs more from factory ends up being the same price as a cheaper lower trim, just because the cheaper lower trim is more recognizable. So that's just how it is, again, it is what it is, just like with the Shelby Supersnake. Before we move on to the final entry, let's talk about honorable mentions. The V8 M3 and V10 M6. So these aren't actually trims that were fully discontinued, they're just engines specifically. That's why they're here in honorable mentions. But basically these versions of the M3 and M6 with the V8 and V10 respectively, their exhaust note, however, is unforgettable. They were held back by a garbage SMG gearbox that they came with, and even though they had a manual transmission, BMW themselves had so few allotments for it that they rarely sold them from factory paired with one, because they themselves were trying to desperately push SMG technology onto the world. BMW basically said, we're going to make a certain amount of manual gearboxes for these vehicles, that's it. So it wasn't like you, the customer, can order one and determine it. You had to deal with what showed up at the dealer floor, and these garbage SMGs would later be replaced with the glorious DCT and the future models of these cars, but with the fact that the future models wouldn't have a V10 or V8 anymore. That glorious V10 M6 making F1 noises, because this was a time period where BMW was trying to get involved with that. Oh my lord, I would have loved to have witnessed that V10 paired with a DCT in the new M6. And now this brings us to the final entry, the Datsun 260Z. So everyone knows about the S30 Fairlady, the gorgeous 240Z that is the star of Wangan Midnight, Devil Z itself. It is also a win streak breaker of arcade machines, and I hate him. Just kidding, that's actually Blackbird for me. Seriously, Tatsuya. Yo, MF, sorry, but better not throw another Namco truck at me on the 59th race of my story loop for the 10th time in a row. I just want my freaking carbon gauge, for Christ's sake. What was I on about again? Oh, right. The 280Z, or 280ZX as well, would also be remembered as a fast turbo spoolie boy from factory, and its styling would be etched into the vaporwave fever dream that was the 80s. But if I told you a trim that existed between these two, I'd forgive you for forgetting that was even a thing. The 260Z was made for 4 years globally, from 1974 to 1978, making it one of the shortest car generation runs really in the history of cars. But literally, it's even shorter in the United States. It was only available for sale for 1 year only, being just 1974. This means that finding one of these in the States, a USDM model that's left-hand drive, is extremely rare. It doesn't help when you realize that the 280Z was actually made from 1975 onwards, meaning that its run, even worldwide, overlapped with the 260Z. So a lot of people, when they went to the dealership lots, they would rather pick the newer, faster one over the older, outdated one. So what that ends up resulting is that even less 260s were being produced, because again, dealers put orders in for manufacturers, and if whatever's moving off the lot is whatever needs to be replaced. So 260Zs, even by die-hard JDM fanboys, are forgotten. And when we saw saw one in person here in Atlanta, I remember one of my friends saying, this must be an up badge 240. Another one said, this is just a fake badge 280Z, I think. Or the third one chimed in and said, maybe this is just a joke we're missing out on. And then the fourth one basically did the, oh, it's just a old boomer who goes on about how their car is special, one of a kind, and made up a fake badge for it. And it's, you know, fake special edition. And believe it or not, that happens a lot. I hang around other Corvette owners, obviously, and a lot of them do put like tacky, cheesy, like fake sounding special edition names in their vets. Mustang owners do it too. It's pretty wince-worthy. They thought it was that in this case, and later the owner came up and tried to tell them about it, and they again kind of wrote it off as just further proving that it was just a fake trim. They're just like, oh, he's saying it was 1 year only. Oh, he's saying it's like super rare and one of a kind. Well, he's out of his mind. He just thinks it's a special car. It just looks like a 240 to 280. Later though, we would sit down for lunch somewhere else, and I would actually Google to them the 260 because I was curious too. And again, I'm not a super big JDM fanboy, but I have a lot of pride in being an automotive YouTuber, so I want to get things right. And they were shocked when they were like, oh, he wasn't joking. And of course, the next time we saw them at Caffeine and Chrome, my friends apologized to the older owner and was like, yeah, we genuinely just didn't know that this was an actual car. And he took it like a champ. He forgave them and laughed and said, I get that a lot. Fun fact, that guy actually owned the car as the first owner, literally back when he bought it new. So he was used to this happening even the day he bought it, because like I said, it was made for 1 year only. So the moment the 280 came stateside, people were just like, this isn't a 260, this is just a rebadge 280. Or they'd be like, this is just an up badge 240. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. And if you love cars and car content, make sure to like this video, make sure to share it with friends, and make sure to check out my other videos. Definitely go check out my coolest car guy videos. It's a total change of pace from this video, so prepare your booty holes for it, because it's quite the video, I'll tell you that. Other than that though, see y'all next time. Blade Angel out.